Yo, 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 what is going on, CoD Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and today I thought we would switch some things up and get into a little bit more of a topical conversation and video reaction. Now, we're going to be watching, and I'll be giving you my thoughts on a video here from Slef, which says, I stepped down as king. Here is why. Now, most of you know, if you watch my content, I very much like talking about the kind of dark side, or just the kind of taboo-ish side, it really feels like, or let's just say the side of kingdom builders that really isn't discussed a lot, which is basically everything that is not progression-based PvP content. And to me, I have always felt that this type of content, or this type of action and tasks that go into the day-to-day life of the game, which is running an alliance, being an officer of an alliance, being a contributing member of an alliance, being a king or queen, managing diplomatic relationships between kingdoms. I mean, everything that you would almost think goes into you being the president of a country and kind of doing all the behind the scenes work, if you will. I love that stuff. And I really think that there's so much value in educating ourselves on what goes into that. And this is hopefully one of those additional paths that we get to go down. So without further ado, as always, if you enjoyed the content, make sure you throw us up because it helps out a lot. Here we go.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another video from me, Beast of my name. And in today's video, I want to talk about 293. You all know the kingdom I started my second project in CoD Dragons on, and be doing great, right? But over the few weeks, a couple of changes have happened. The members know about these already. And in today's video, I want to make it officially public.
And I want to be very clear here, right? You kind of have to give props, very much so, to Slef and his management team, because they have ran one of the most, depending on how on what level of success you define, they have ran one of the most successful jumper projects that started out seasons ago and with hunting Horde, and are still alive to this day. And so to me, even if their project collapsed this season or next season or something drastic happened to the kingdom, I would still consider the project to be a success because they made it past a few seasons and have still been going strong. Again, in whatever sphere of success you define, depending on how many alliances they had going in, how big it was, they ran a successful project. So again, just want to give some flowers where it's due.
As well to the community, so that everyone basically knows about that. So let's jump into the video. So the first thing is what I want to talk about, as you can already see in the background, the current migration. And as you can see, the current migration, we got 32 accounts into 293. If you remember the past migrations from 293, we were always going like crazy. We got always like 50, 60, 100 or more people in. And the reason behind that, why we were kind of going slow here today, in today's migration, was because with the new season and these classes and all that type of stuff, we trying to be basically a B kingdom, B class kingdom, and therefore we can obviously not grow up to like 20 billion power, right? And yeah, that's the reason, or one of the reasons why we going slow with migration. The second thing what I want to talk about with you today is I'm not the only king anymore of 293. And by that, I want to say that...
So I guess just to briefly comment on the first part, I guess he's just stating that because ultimately they are now a more powerful and stronger kingdom, they're probably being somewhat more selective with the people that they bring in order to either avoid going to full status or just trying to maybe teeter on the edge. Unless they're okay going into full status, and if that's the case, then again, they probably would still only be able to bring in a smaller number of people, depending, of course, on the power that they're bringing in as well. So I guess that was just kind of more of a nod to we're stronger. We just kind of have to be a little bit more careful about how many people we're bringing in overall.
We have officially changed from a king system to counter system. The change were made because, first of all, we want to provide the 24/7 R5 position for the members, so that basically at all times someone is online to take over and, you know, to know what type of plans the counter have. And the other thing behind that is also, you know, I by myself could not handle anymore the time needed for being a king by myself, right? And I didn't want it to, like, I didn't, what is the correct word for that? I didn't saw it, right? And so I had a talk then, and therefore with that they told me, yo, this is the current situation. You cannot handle it by yourself anymore. Why we don't go over to official counter system, and therefore we have made it. That's now, I think we have announced it like 2 weeks ago. Kind of at the beginning of December, we announced that we having a counter system, and I must say, so far we're doing really good on it. The members seems to be happy.
Okay. He's probably going to say a little bit more. However, what I will say is that if the primary reason is that you're just trying to do more R5 rotations, that doesn't mean you have to switch from a king system to a council system. Let me explain exactly, most likely, what the king system is that he's referring to, where essentially you just have kind of like an R6 position. That's really what this type of system is, and or can be, where you just have one person who's an R5 and doesn't rotate. Now, you can basically do something like where you have the head R5 and you can still do rotational R5s. Now, you could just move the R5 up to an R6. And then, so an example of this would be Slef could just slide up to an R6 position, and then he would just have a number of R4s that maybe elevate to R5s, even though they're still in the R4 position, and then they just rotate, right? And you can still keep the same system. You just have to do some very slight modifications, even though it's really just word adjustments, right? A word association at that point. Compared to him now going to a council system, which means that you're not having kind of a head, tiebreaker, one person that can kind of make the final call and final say if and when needed. Now it's you might have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, depending on how many. Usually it's like 2 to 3, 2 to 4. Sometimes it's 1 rep per alliance if you're running a council system. But the challenge is that if you're not running an odd number, then you kind of, I don't want to say screw yourself, but you kind of put yourself into tricky territory, because then you don't have a tie break. So an example is if you had 2 or 4, you would basically have to have 2 and 0, right? If you're doing votes or things like that, and or you'd have to do 3-1 if you have 4, or 4-1, right? Because a 1-1 or a 2-2 split would basically mean that you're tied and you really can't move anywhere at that point. So the thing with council systems as well is that at times, if you don't have a dedicated tie break, in some way, shape, or form, it can stagnate. It can slow decisions. It can make conversations take longer. It can make policy changes take a lot longer, compared to having kind of a king system where it really just depends on how you have your system set up. What I kind of often speak to as one of the efficient things is you kind of do a table talk where everyone gets an opportunity to chime in and have a conversation and to give their feedback. And if you want to do some kind of like a water temperature vote gauge, cool. If not, that's fine. And then from there, you can have whoever is your head honcho or your tiebreak person basically listen to all the feedback and then make the best decision based on the feedback and how they see it that is in line with what the kingdom's goals are. What's the philosophy? What's the foundation that it was built upon? Because that's really what you're trying to stay in line with, right? Unless some of your core foundations are changing, and hopefully if they're changing for the right reasons, and or if they just needed to, but if not, those are kind of the things that you would typically keep in line with. So let's continue going.
The feedback we got so far is really good, and yeah, I cannot say that it was not a good decision to do the council. The third thing is what I want to talk about.
So the one thing I'll just say here is I wish he would have went into more detail. I wish he would have explained, this is how we had the system set up previously. These were some of the pros and cons, and or this is how it operated, versus now that we're transitioning to this council system, this is how it operates now, and this is the feedback that's relevant to those changes in the system on why people are enjoying it. Going into those levels of detail instead of what he's kind of doing now, which is giving just a broad, vague response, it does. My point is, I'm not saying this is bad. I'm just saying if you're the average viewer, you're not really understanding as much as you probably would like to, especially if you're someone who has not been a part or has instituted these types of systems before.
Coming back to the migration, is what actually also have an effect on the future migrations is that 293 as a kingdom itself is not accepting T4 players anymore, or like basically T4. If they're like a bigger group, maybe not, like that depends on the situation, but overall you can expect that 293 as a kingdom is not accepting T4 players anymore, and that is due to the reason that with the future plans what we have for 293, as you all know, what I always said in the past, I want to go to top 1 kingdom at some point, and this goal for myself is still there, and that's how I build up to 93. So you can expect that this type of goal is still there. We want to achieve great things. We want to have great wars. We're going to have long wars also going on, and therefore T5 is just a way to go at the end, and therefore we looking forward to grow as a kingdom, but with T5 basically exclusive for the future. Yeah, and that where the...
Okay, so before we get to the end, let me just comment on that. So I was just taking some notes, as I usually do when I'm watching these, so I can make sure that all my thoughts are aligned. So the first one he says is talking about only accepting T5 players. I'm kind of 50-50 on this one. And I say that because obviously the lower powered players, the lower the power of the player, the more you can bring in. And so if you're going to try and kind of min-max this and you want to be able to bring in, because ideally what makes sense is you want to try to bring in 150 players every migration cycle. Now, this is not always going to be achievable. But my point is that should be what you're aiming to try and do, regardless if you get there or not. Because you're given 150 slots, you should be trying to fill up to all of those slots every migration season. And how do you do that? Well, you do that by not accepting only 100 to 150 mil players, because you'll actually be able to then bring more overall players in. However, it really is up to each kingdom and their management teams for how they want to go about that, depending on how that kingdom is set up. I'm just simply stating the facts on if you're trying to bring in the most amount of people, you want to have the highest overall activity, you want to have the least amount of player attrition and drop-off, you bring in as many players as possible to mitigate that. So the margins are a lot lower. And so that's why for me it's kind of 50-50. It's like, yeah, okay, maybe you could bring in people that are like around 60 to 70 mil on average if you're just trying to go like maybe min T5. And yeah, okay, you could probably bring in more people than if you're looking at 100 mil plus. Otherwise, you're just always going to have to be kind of flirting with that crowded to full status going to, back to, going to, back to, if you're only going to be focusing on T5. Because you could still bring in people that are 40, 50 million T4, that people even that are close to T5, and they're maybe still willing to spend or willing to maybe be more active and more contributing than some of the T5 players. I mean, it's not crazy to say that we've seen a number of T4 players that have been more active and more PvP contributing and engaged than some T5 players. And that's not to say that that's just a complete across the board, but there have been some. And my point in saying that is looking for those diamonds in the rough, right? It's not to only say that you're only going to be able to get to where you want to if you only recruit a specific threshold or power threshold or tier threshold player and above. You can still achieve that by bringing in players that are lower than that. I guess I just would have liked for maybe more of a specific reason on why it is that they're not considering bringing in lower power players. Again, they can do whatever they want, right? It's their kingdom. That's how they're doing it. I just would have liked to at least hear some kind of like justified thought process, regardless if anyone agrees or disagrees with it, but just something that is there, something that is a unique thought that they came up with and said, okay, well, this is the reason why we're doing it and why we believe in testing this out. And I'm okay with that because I would just love to hear something like that. Let's continue.
These important information which I wanted to share and make public here today. I think you deserve to know about that, guys, especially if you're coming to my stream, and when you may be wondering these changes or I answer questions differently, that is due to the fact of one of these 3 reasons, or one of these 3 changes. And I hope you have enjoyed this little video here, and I hope you also got some answers to what you may have asked yourself about 2.9.3. Yeah, and like always, guys, let me know in the comment any feedback what you have. And as always, stay healthy, have a great day, have a great night, and we're gonna see us then soon on the next one.
All right, it's Dunsky. That was it. That was basically the last thing. Okay, let's read some comments. I'm just curious because there's like a few here, not a lot. Let me see. I think one problem that I'm seeing with 293's recruitment that may potentially come back to hurt you in the future, it seems you are just accepting high-powered players instead of players who are active and can pull their weight. I mean, that's kind of what we said. A 200 mil player who only gets like 15 to 20 mil merits is dead weight compared to a 60 mil who can get 12 mil merits. What's the comments here? There's one big problem with merits. If division is weak, people earn merits, just merit trade. How can I know who is active? I know my kingdom forbids merit trading. This way anyone caught will have consequences and active contributors can be found. I mean, it's one way to do it. Thanks for the feedback. Sharing for migration. We're not only looking for merits. Let me see this one. Top 1 kingdom is pretty massive goal. Best of luck with that. Oh yeah, I guess we didn't really comment on that one. Also, congrats on getting more life balance, though non-R4s can't even fathom how much time R4s spend on the game planning, let alone council member or kings. Yeah, and that was one of the things too as well is, do I think that the decision overall is good for Slef? Absolutely, because I can only imagine how much time he probably has or doesn't have to produce content and to do other things where management is not taking up so much of your time. I'm sure for those of you that remember when I ran my 65 project in COD, how focused I was on that, how sometimes I would go a day, 2 days without pumping out content. And it was all because of how much time and energy and focus and love and passion and belief that I put into doing the project and being there for the project, being available, being accessible. There's a lot that goes into. I've done a couple videos on my channel where I kind of walk you through the day in the life of an R6, of being a kind of kingdom rep for everyone, being a steward, being someone who's responsible and accountable for everyone. And I kind of show you some of the things that I do from the beginning of my day to the end of my day when I was managing kingdoms, especially in 65, and even I think when I did one, and I think I did one in Infinity Kingdom, and I can't remember where it was, 70 something it might have been, or another number that I'm just totally forgetting now. But I've done a couple of these, and I always find them very insightful because it just gives you all, and hopefully it's a nice kind of look behind the scenes. But yeah, as it pertains to this, it kind of feels that way, but that's why I'm saying I would have liked to have heard from Slef on a little bit more of the reasoning behind it. But overall, yeah, man, get more of that work-life balance, absolutely. And I do think that the move overall, if it's really just coming down to him not having enough time, doing something that will change that. And if this just ends up being the best solution that they feel is appropriate, then yeah, kudos to them. And again, only best wishes on it going forward. So that's it for me. I'd love to know what you guys think, and let me know in the comments down below. It's going to do it for me. As always, until next time, we'll catch you later.